This time he gave me a slightly different kind of a title and said I should speak about myself. That's not very easy. But then, well, I'll give it my best shot and try and hope that you don't go to sleep when I talk. So, he asked me to actually tell you about my disruptive entrepreneurial experiment. Okay, I'm a woman, I'm an entrepreneur, but is that all what I am? Is that what begins with me and is that what ends with me? I'm more than that, I guess. I believe that mountains beckon every soul. To climb or not to climb the mountains is an option that every person has. But if you do climb the mountain, then never look down again. Keep climbing, irrespective of how many falls you have along the way. So, having said that, let me start with a bit about my background, what I am and who am I and what is it that I do. I'm an engineer and strangely an electrical and electronics engineer who ventured into the field of pharma way back in 1992. Totally different field, a totally different education background. But I think, as I heard the Dell's person speaking, the story speaking about it, engineers learn one thing, whether we get good degrees or not, we learn how to analyze very well in our life. And I think that's what makes us reasonably decent entrepreneurs. We learn to take a lot of things with acid and we learn to come out of it quite well. So let me start about myself. When I was growing up, I never thought I would become an entrepreneur or do something great. But then growing up in IIT campus, my late father was a professor in Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. And while growing up, I guess every child of every professor and every person in IIT felt that they should join the IIT Bombay. So it was like a foregone conclusion. Though I never managed to get into IIT or even the VJTI for that matter. I did my engineering from Andhra University in Vizag. So what did I do that made me an entrepreneur? I still don't know. I'm still trying to understand the reasons behind it. But when I was doing my engineering, it's like I grew up in the IIT campus. I was a happy-go-lucky child. I was a single child for my parents. My parents never treated me like a girl. They always treated me equal to a boy, and I think that made all the difference in my life. I was not born to conservative parents. My father believed in me and believed I could do a lot of things. I probably did not do very well as far as I was concerned at the starting phase of my life because I fell in love when I was 16 years old with an MTech student. So I think as my love progressed, my grades went down inversely. And that continued during my engineering when I got married in my second year of engineering and had my older son in my final year of engineering. So, but having said that, yes, I did decide to come back. I did decide to create a career for myself. And when I came back, I think all of us are aware of something in life, right? When you finish a graduation degree, you still don't know what is it you're good at. You have no idea. You just come in and you try and see who's the first person who offers you a job, and then you try and take it from there on. So I too was offered a job in a marketing of computers which had just come into India, and there were all those assembled computers that were there at a fantastic salary of 1,000 rupees a month. So I started my career with that. From then on, I moved on to another job that is a part of Bajaj Group where probably my salary increased to 1,750 per month. I realized one thing, both the jobs were boring. I didn't like either of the two jobs that I did. But I realized I had one aptitude that was growing, and that was marketing. I found that I could sell practically anything to anybody. So that was my conviction or my confidence in myself, or my ability to convince somebody else that I had the best product in the world. Like they say in marketing, it's not the thing what you're selling. It is basically what is the part of it that you're trying to promote and sell. If you try and look at refrigerators, for example, if anybody remembers the Kelvinator advertisement that used to go about saying, we are the coolest one, we have the PUF technology. Now, every goddamn refrigerator had it. Now, they were not the coolest one, all the temperatures are the same. But it's the way you kind of present it and the way you kind of sell the product. So was bored of selling engineering switches, I was bored of selling computers, so then what do? I decided to try and learn something about precious stones. And believe me, I didn't learn about them. I learned about rubies, I learned about sapphires, I learned about topazes, amethysts, name it. And I actually started selling stones out of the country. I used to carry stones, get them validated by the Gemological Institute in Mumbai at the Bourse House, Diamond Bourse House, and I used to take these stones and I used to sell them all over Europe. I developed a fair amount of good customers. I was doing a reasonably decent job. Able to at least earn my way to buy a Ural pass, travel all over Europe, sell the stones, come back and still have some money left over. As long as all that was happening, nobody in the house had any problems with what I was doing. The problems actually started when my father-in-law shifted to Mumbai. He was a vice president in Ranbaxy in those days, and he shifted back to Mumbai, and during one of the dinner parties, I got to meet the managing director of Armor Chemicals, Dr. Atma Gupta, and he felt I had a very good aptitude for marketing, and he wanted me to enter pharma. Now that created the biggest ruckus in my house and everywhere else. My father-in-law was one of those persons who believed that women should be heard and not seen. Now the idea of me joining pharma and that to marketing, absolute no, no, no. Well, Dr. Gupta started off with a small thing. He said, okay, let her at least do one. He wanted me to go to get the UNICEF over to India for one of his plants that was based out of Mandideep, and he wanted a UNICEF approval for his plant, which was a finished formulations plant. The first thing I told Dr. Gupta when I met him was that I had no idea what pharmaceuticals were all about. In fact, when he said formulations, I said the only formulations I knew were the baby formulations I gave my child. I didn't know what a formulation meant. Later on, I learned formulations meant the finished product. I didn't know about it. I was 23, 24, so I really didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But yes, he was a wonderful teacher, and albeit a very, very cranky man. He used to lose his cool at the smallest of the things, but a very good teacher. He knew his subject very well. So to cut a long story short, I did manage to get the UNICEF into India. I did manage to get the approval for their Mandideep plant. Then comes the question of my joining his company. And then began the biggest problem in my life, or rather, I still know that was not easy. It took one Dr. Gupta, it took me, it took my husband, it took everybody to convince my father-in-law that I should be allowed to do what I wanted to do. So conditions were put up that nobody in the house would take care of my kids. I would have to make arrangements for it. So who do I turn to? I turn to my mother, who was working as a teacher in those days, and she's here in this audience also. I requested her, and she took a voluntary retirement. She was working as a teacher in St. John's Evangelist, and she agreed to take care of my kids. So my children were in between the babysitters, my mother, and her voluntary retirement, and I started my career. It was not easy. It was very difficult. Pharmaceuticals, if you look at it in the 90s perspective, it was a male-dominated world. The only women in this industry were the women who belonged to the pharmaceutical, that is, who belonged to families. Whether it was a Lupin or whether it was a Ranbaxy, there were only the family women who were there in it. Women as independent working employees were not there. And that too, I entered into a field that was called the active pharmaceutical ingredients. So there were very few people who were in my kind of a field or my kind of profession. I put in a lot of hard work. I learned, built up my confidence, traveled a lot, met a lot of customers, and I did realize, yes, that I did have the aptitude to sell something, and first of all, I needed to believe in the product myself, so I started learning about the products. I had to pick up all the chemistry knowledge which I had forgotten post my 12th and my first year of engineering, where we did have something called chemistry even in the first year of engineering, but after that I don't think I touched chemistry, so I had to again get back to my books and try and understand what is it I was learning. So starting from there on, it was a journey that was moving forward. Even my father-in-law admitted at one point that I did have the aptitude. And I think he passed one statement about me which stays back in my mind even today. I don't know whether to call it a compliment or not, but he said, I had the ability to sell ice creams to people living in igloos. So I guess it was a compliment, coming from an absolute person who was totally different. He was a wonderful man. I mean, a very brilliant man, a technocrat par excellence. Even today, I mean, people talk of him in Red Banksy. He was the first man who set up the plant in Maholi, the semi-synthetic penicillin plant in Maholi, which in the private industry, that was the first plant that was set up. He was a chemical engineer par excellence. So, coming on, years passed on, I moved on to Biochem Synergy, where I became a DGM, and there I handled cephalosporins and antibiotics. In fact, I was in antibiotics in Armor. I moved to cephalosporins and antitubercular in Biochem. And then the last job which I did was as a general manager in Ajanta Pharma. And in 96, I think it was in 96 that I joined Ajanta Pharma. And yes, that was also the year when Business India had published a photograph of mine and a note under that stating that I was the youngest general manager who was made a general manager in that period. But was this all very easy? It was not. You know, to breathe some air, to get a lungful of good air, you need to sacrifice a lot. And I think somewhere along the way I was sacrificing something called family. My ambition was probably taking me high, but somewhere I did realize that I was cutting out on the family time completely. My husband had moved to Ankleshwar, he was working in UPL, and my children were still very young, so basically I would leave for Kandivali early morning. At 7 o'clock my kids would be sleeping, I would come back again at 10 in the night and they would be sleeping. So I think they probably saw me and my husband as two people who would keep coming in with some chocolates once in a while, so they were not even sure as to who we were. For them, my parents became their parents. So I was a bit worried because I genuinely felt that I was losing out on the kids somewhere along the way. I took one very drastic decision in 97. I decided I would quit my job. I was at the peak of my career. I was drawing a very good salary. I had all the perks that went with it in the private industry. I decided I would quit. But were there many options available for me? I was not too sure. Options are there. Yes, you can go independent. But can you sustain that independence when you don't have any money? When the pockets are going to be empty because you're not sure about how much money you're going to get back in the business. So it was during this phase that I took the call, started a small company. My partners were my mother and one other person who's also in this room, Mr. Vipul Gondia, who became my partner at that time, and we started a company called Murli Krishna Exports. And the name Murli Krishna, because I like Krishna as God a lot, and for me that name always stands synonymous with Krishna in a loving form, rather than Krishna in the fighting form. So for me, he's always the lad who plays the flute. So Murli Krishna Exports started doing well. It was an Indian tea company. Initially, I didn't have any money. I still remember there were days when I used to take $100 to my mother every 1 week for my survival purposes because I really had no money left with me. We even, over a period of time, we went into trading where we would start buying the raw materials and exporting the raw materials because my specialization was all my contacts that I had all over the world. It was along this period that there was some order that we had executed and we found a technical problem within the shipment. That's when I connected with one very good friend of mine, Dr. Vijay K. Shastri, who is a brilliant technical man, absolutely brilliant, knows his chemistry, alpha to zeta as I call it. And I requested him for help and he gave me he went, checked the materials, realized what was the problem and then told me what had gone wrong with it. We were able to correct it, but then he came up with a suggestion that why don't you set up a plant? You know something, when somebody says something like setting up a plant, it seems so easy. On paper, when you draw a figure, it's like, oh, it's nothing. It's not that. So at least I had some brain still left about me, so I told him, if you're going to tell me to set something up, you had better be a part of it. And he did agree. And well, that was the beginning of the disruptive entrepreneurial journey which I started. I, I still recollect the day when I sat down and spoke to my parents for the first time and told them, yes, I'm going to set up a plant and this is going to be the kind of investment that will go into it. My father looked at me and asked me, are you sure you know how many zeros are there in a crore of rupees? I said, I do know the number of zeros. He said, do you know something, even if I sell whatever I have, and even if everybody, even if your husband and everyone sells off what they have, we cannot repay any bank in the world. I was stubborn. I've always been stubborn, I guess, and that's one streak in me that's always put me or taken me forward in my life. So I collected money from everybody I could, beg, borrow, steal. My husband, my mother, my father, every person in the world had to give money out for me to set this plant up. So Murli Krishna Pharma as a company was formed. We also got 2 foreign investors. People who believed in me and they still believe in me. So we managed to get 2 foreign investors and we started Murli Krishna Pharma. Midway through the project itself, the problems start. The plant is not getting ready because there is a financial problem that does lie within it. And we didn't have sufficient money with us. We had planned or we had assumed that this would be the cost of setting it up, but assumptions and realities never match. And I realized that it was a problem. Well, in those days, Bank of Maharashtra was a very good bank. I won't say the same thing about them today, but in those days, they had some real dynamic people working there, and the DGM at that point really came to my help, and he enhanced the sanction value what I had to ensure that I completed setting up the plant. One thing I should give credit, I've been hearing a lot of political talks today about the kind of changes that have occurred. I, for one, completely believe in that. The reason being that when I set up this plant, I can only say something. It was the worst phase of the Indian era. Because every approval from the Indian government was like, you have money in hand, you get the approval. You don't have money in hand, you don't get the approval. I'm sorry to state this, and I'm stating this on a public podium, but that was my situation too. There was a point when I said, I'm going to stop construction itself. This is what's going to happen, because I didn't have the money to pay the kind of money that was being asked from me. But okay, I managed to complete it. People managed to bring down their costs for doing the thing, and I managed to do it. But I find the change today where the number of people coming asking for money have reduced. So I think that is definitely a very positive change in the country, and I'm very happy I'm still in India, and I'm very happy that I'm running what I'm running. So to cut a long story short, the plant got constructed. We went through our good phases. We did very well up to 2007-8. We were doing pretty well. We are a 100% export-oriented unit. We are a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant, and we are also European Union approved facility. 2008-9 we got hit very badly, because that was when 9-10 was when the recession took place in the United States. Though people don't believe it, but the fact remains that any recession in any part of the world does tend to hit and affect every small vendor in the world, in the country itself. It is like the ripples do get hit. It's if I'm not able to get my money from my customer, I'm not able to pay my supplier, then my supplier is not able to pay somebody else. So it's a kind of a ripple effect that goes on. And this is a problem that happens all over, and it happened for us too. We went through a horrible phase, loss-making phase for 2 or 3 years, and that was a period when I guess I was at my lowest ebb. Vijay was extremely brilliant in what he did, but his work was more technical. Technically, we were still one of the strongest contenders in the market, but financially, we were going down the drain, and going down very, very fast. So I know the kind of risks I took at that point. I also know the kind of troubles we went through. I also give credit not only to my stakeholders, to Vijay and a lot of people. I give a lot of credit to my parents, specifically my father. He stood behind me like, I would say, like Rock of Gibraltar. He was there for me all through, and I think it is one thing I should state, that if he were not there, probably I wouldn't have done this. I would have somewhere along the way, I would have given up on what I was doing. Days changed, we got more investments into place. Today the company is doing very well. Today we are reasonably good. I won't say fantastic or a big company in the big league, but we are going that way. But more than the financial happiness, I would say it is more the technical technical happiness that we are enjoying, because we are moving into spaces where very few people have dared to tread. We have worked on innovation, we have worked on development, we have worked on R&D. So whatever we have developed, we are working on the IP towards that product. Our IPs are not created with the idea that we have an IP in place. Our IPs are created with the idea of making life more easier for the patient. We have created patient-friendly solutions. To give you a small example on what we did, one of the products what we developed has been on a corticosteroid called budesonide. Budesonide as a normal product, the way the people use it today, you have hardly 20% that goes into the lungs. Basically, it starts clogging. It's a lifetime disease. You're not going to get rid of your asthma, COPD diseases that easily. What we did was we converted it into a nano solution, and then we are able to provide it through a specific device, which ensures that the product goes completely, dissolves, does not stay, does not cause a deposition, and is very easy to use and makes it patient friendly. So these are just some of the things. We are working on oncology, we are working on ophthalmics, we are working on a variety of molecules. Today the moieties are large in number. The methodologies used by us are very unconventional. We are also approved by the Department of Science and Technology for the R&D work what we are doing. So we are there. But one thing I should tell everybody who's budding to be an entrepreneur, or, as people say, startups are growing a lot. Startups are the key to the new India. I would like to advise all the youngsters only one thing. First, understand what is going to be the area where you're going to specialize in before you set up anything. Because you see so many startups going burst too. They start off with a lot of enthusiasm, and basically most of them are in the software related fields. And you find a lot of them just walking off because they're not able to sustain it. I believe that people should get more of experience, should at least work and understand what is going to be their niche area. In colleges and schools, whatever appears to be a challenging thing is not necessarily going to be that interesting when you take it into the practical field. So you need to get your bearings well, and need to understand things. In this process of the last so many years, from 92 till today, I have built a plant. I have two kids. One is 32 years old and one is 26 years old. As per them, I have probably given more time of my life to my factory than I have given to them. It's a fact, I do agree. The plant to me is more of a baby than anybody else. I lost my husband in 2013. 2014, I lost my father. I'm still standing. So I guess I'm what you might call the common, typical Indian entrepreneur. What you learn in India as an entrepreneur, I don't think you learn in any management schools. The reason being, here you're asked to dive deep sea without carrying any gear with you. If you sink, nobody knows you even started. If you come up, you stand on a podium and talk about it. So you're one or you're not. So it's a very strange life out here. But if you set up one plant, let me assure you, you can set up hundreds of them. It's the first one that takes a lot of courage, a lot of madness, and a lot of blind faith. And people who believe in you, that is the most important thing. If you don't have anybody who believes in you, you can't do it. Otherwise it remains only a dream. For me, I had people believing in me. I had Vijay who believed in me. I had my parents who believed in me. I had my friends who believed in me. I had a lot of people who believed in me. I don't know whether they're right in believing in me or not, but then they did believe in me, and that's probably what gave me the confidence and the strength to move on. So, that's it. I hope, Satyaji, it's all right. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to me. Sorry if it was a bit boring, but I really didn't know what to talk about. It's his fault. You can blame him for it.
No, Miss Satya, it wasn't boring, it was truly inspiring. And from your invaluable experience, what I came back home today is that there's only one power above all the powers, and that is our willpower that can make us the leaders, that can help us achieve our dreams like you truly did. You are an inspiration through and through. So, yes, sir. Now
so this is what makes India Leadership Conclave very special. We not only have people, those who make a beautiful presentations and share their stories. Here I wanted to present the life and the time of her and how she undertook the journey with all odds and satisfied all odds. And here it is as today, one of the top company in drug delivery system. So let's give her a huge round of applause to Satya. Our good friends are very good.
So yes, we have Mr. Satya Brahma felicitating Miss Satya Vadlamani. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your precious time, and thank you so much for sharing your experience with us here. Thank you so much, and one more time a huge round of applause because I'm gonna need that energy for our next segment. That's gonna be round the corner. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the most awaited segment is here. We are entering into the most awaited segment.